Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. My name's Doug Cunnington, and today we're going to talk to Chris Panteli from Linkifi. And I don't know Chris too well, but we've exchanged emails for a few months, actually, trying to get this interview hooked up. So I'm really pumped. And we're going to talk about HARO link building and his background as an entrepreneur, actually in the restaurant business, which is kind of interesting because I love food. I love cooking, and I'm interested in all that kind of stuff. In fact, one of my guilty pleasures is to watch the Food Network or similar, and just people going to restaurants, trying the food, and talking to the restaurateurs and all that stuff. So, Chris, welcome to the show. How's it going today?
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been a fan for a long time. I also share that as a guilty pleasure. You have a show in the States, drive-ins, dive-ins and dines or something.
Yeah, Guy Fieri. Yeah.
That's it, yeah. So yeah, really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you got it. So I want to get to know you a little bit better and kind of go back to the beginning. So just so people understand, like we're gonna dive deep into your background here in the beginning, and then we're gonna focus on HARO link building pretty specifically. So we're gonna dive into a lot of the details, like the advantages of using HARO versus other link building techniques, of which there's dozens of them. We'll also talk about just the tips and tricks, because you have been doing this for quite a while. And I've found that HARO backlinks are some of the most effective that you can get, just because of the way, sort of the channel that it happens in. I mean, these are like news websites, or at least very credible websites typically. So that's how the interview is going to go. So Chris,
Sounds good.
Let's dig into your background, and I'm going to contradict myself. And I'm just curious, when did you start working on like affiliate marketing and niche sites? Obviously, running a restaurant is much different than digital marketing.
Yeah. Okay. So I graduated from university with a degree in economics, and I didn't really know what to do. So I took over the family business of fish and chips. I always wanted to have my own business, and something I'd worked in since I was, a teenager as well. And that was really good for the first 5 or 6 years. We grew the business and everything was, doing well. But I did quite early on sort of notice that it was getting a lot more competitive. In the UK, food prices were increasing, profit margins shrinking. And that was about the time that I came across, as a lot of bloggers often do, those sort of glistening income reports online. So I started my own personal finance website. That was my foray into the industry. And within about a year, I started getting traction, started making $1,000 a month, and probably got addicted as you can to sort of anything. So I really got the bug for it. I started obviously learning about backlinks, and I think the first sort of campaign that I ran for my own site was a guest posting campaign. That went super well. Managed to build like 50 guest post links in about 12 months, which, furthered how well the site was doing. And I also found out about HARO, which is a lot more intensive, time consuming. But I wanted those, super premium, ultra amazing links that couldn't be achieved from guest posting or outreach emailing. So that's when I started to do HARO. I probably sent 30 HARO emails before landing my first one. I was about to give up, and then I remember when I landed that first one and it went live. I think it was on a pretty good, another pretty good personal finance website, and I think the one after that I got was a New York Times. So then I really got into it. So started building HARO links as well, and obviously I was working 55 hours a week in my fish and chip shop, and definitely looking at the way I could leverage this online digital marketing business to possibly get me out of the shop, or at least supplement an income in the shop. That's when I needed to offload some of the jobs for Life Upswing, and that's when I met my now business partner, my co-founder of Linkifi, because I wanted him to sort of do some guest post campaigns for me. So he agreed to do that, and he looked at my website and said, hey, where did you get all of these like HARO style links from? So I explained, I said, I do HARO. And he said, oh, that's cool. He said, do you want to maybe do some HARO link building for some of his clients? So I was already doing like 50 hours a week, but I thought, yeah, go on then. I'll give that a go. It sounds good. So we started doing that, and then we started organically seeing that a lot more people wanted that, and we started our own agency, Linkifi, and here I am today.
What year was it when you started your first, niche or authority site? What year was that?
So the finance website was the tail end of 2017, I think. And then as the pandemic started, that's when I started to see the need for something else. I actually also got diagnosed type 1 diabetic as well, just as the pandemic started in the UK. So I knew my days of 12 hours on my feet were probably not going to. I needed to look after my health. So that's when we went all in on Linkifi, which is coming up to 3 years old in January.
Okay, 3 years. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll swing back, and you mentioned that it was a family business. So, yeah, talk about like the history of the restaurant and stuff like that.
My family's been in fish and chips. They came to my dad's side of the family came to England from Cyprus. They had factory jobs, and they saved up enough money to be able to buy their first fish and chip shop. The fish and chip shops in England at that time were predominantly run by locals, and they used to have really quite short hours. So they'd be open from a couple of hours at lunchtime, a couple of hours in the evening. So when my grandparents, my Greek grandparents, managed to save up enough money and buy a shop, they just switched it and started opening till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning all day. And quickly were able to save up to buy another shop, and then another shop, and they built a small, a small business of a number of shops. So when I graduated from university, it was something that was like established, but they were getting older, and it was something that I was really excited to jump into and take over.
How many restaurants do they have in their, I guess, it's not
portfolio.
A franchise, portfolio, yeah.
Yeah. Now, it wasn't too many. I think it was about, at its peak, maybe, I think 5 or 6.
Okay.
And then, my dad had one as well. So I took over that one after university. And they were sort of interlinked, but not, if that makes, complicated family arrangements.
Yeah. Got it. So it was like a chain, so people could recognize the name from another town, but it wasn't run all by the same person. So you were running one shop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And how many people did you have on staff at the shop?
So we used to have about, on the busiest day, we'd probably have 5 people. So in total, we'd probably have about 7, 8, 9 staff running the one shop.
Okay, gotcha. And then you were in there like whatever,
all the time,
7 days a week or whatever, like constantly.
That's it. Yeah.
Man, and how many hours a week were you working? Did you say like 50 or 60?
I used to get there for about 9 a.m. and I used to get. We started closing earlier and earlier as the sort of industry changed. But yeah, it was probably. I used to get there for about 9 a.m. and get home about 10 p.m. and we'd have like an hour's lunch break in the middle. So it was graft. It was hard graft.
Yeah,
physically demanding.
Yeah, and the restaurant business, you're like running around all the time. You got to keep the customers happy, and then there's drama going on with your staff potentially. So
things breaking.
What kind of challenges did you have? Any like big, maybe things breaking that you had to overcome?
I think, and this is what drew me so much to the online space, is first of all, you are just limited by proximity in any physical business. It doesn't matter how much marketing you do. There is only going to be a set number of people that are physically going to be able to come to a brick and mortar business. So it did feel oftentimes that you would be banging your head up against the wall when you were trying to offer the best product, the best service. But really, you are just so limited in terms, especially for food as well. You are so limited with the radius of who it is that you can serve. So I think a food business like that, it has a ceiling. So, and I was always aware of that, but that just became increasingly more of an issue for me, especially if you're someone that's like motivated and driven to grow and experiment and test and tweak these sorts of things. You are so limited within that confined location-based business. So there would have been an option to open more premises, but the whole industry itself was facing, massively rising commodity costs. So fish, potatoes, every other year there would be a crisis. So the weather, I haven't really looked in. Sometimes I'll dive into the old like industry Facebook group and I just see, I think this year they've had potato prices, 25 kilogram sacks. I think we were paying about £8 when I got out. With the weather that's been happening this year, they've gone up to £25. It's a 4x sometimes on commodity prices, and you can't put your portion prices up by 4 times because no one will come. It's just a constant uphill battle. That's how it felt.
Man, yeah, and you hear, I guess the stats over here are like really dramatic for restaurants that close, and I mean just as a observer and a person that like drives around and goes to restaurants, like a restaurant opens, they're open for like a year or two and then they close. And then there's kind of a revolving door where like new restaurants pop in. And I don't know, the success rate is it's pretty low. It's like 10% succeed or something like that. You had the advantage, at least you were coming into like a known entity, a business model, you had things running. And it sounds like since it was a family business, you worked there like as a kid, right? Like growing up, like you knew the ins and outs and you were in there, whatever, frying stuff when you were 10 years old or something, right?
Not quite that young. I think about 12. But yeah. And you know what? It breaks my heart as well because, I know the industry. I know the blood, sweat and tears that goes in, and we all have to eat, but it's just become so competitive. There are so many choices and it's so difficult to survive out there. And when you're getting hit with, ever increasing taxes, legislations, random food checks, spot checks. I think we got raided by immigration twice when I was there to make sure we didn't have illegal immigrants working there. It's just one thing after another. And it just feels like you can't put your head above water. So anyone that's making a success of it and enjoying it, my hat goes off to you. But for me, I noticed the signs early on, and that's when I started, exploring other avenues.
And I'll just highlight a little parallel, right? So this is a internet marketing podcast. I just like food a lot. I love that diners, drive-ins, and dives show too. That's the one that I binge on often. But here's the real point, right? Here in the like niche site SEO industry, we whine and complain about Google or like Amazon lowers rates or some other thing, right? There's a lot of external factors. Chris, you just highlighted like whatever 10 like very dramatic things that are also external factors in a brick and mortar business. So people want to find something. Usually it's newer people, like inexperienced entrepreneurs that they want to find something that's passive, highly profitable. It doesn't take much time and you're immune to external factors. But the truth is, even if you are in a brick and mortar business where you feel like, okay, it's really hard for people to compete with us, you still have all these other issues that could pop up that are beyond your control and you just have to deal with it. So I think the message is like, there's no free ride. Whatever industry you pick, there's going to be like regulations. There's going to be some other issues, competition levels, change in the industry, new technology. Like there's always something that's popping up. And I can't think of any industry that doesn't have that sort of issue. So no question there, just pulling it together. Like there's no free ride out there.
No,
like you have to,
you're right.
You got to do the work somehow or another. So
yeah. And I think if you can sort of limit your exposure as much as possible, and then doing whatever it is that you're doing, if you are maximizing your enjoyment, your freedom within that, then at least that dampens how much those external factors make you feel. So if you're doing something that you love, you live in it, you're breathing it, you want to do it, and you're getting a buzz from it, and you're getting success, and you can cope with the small failures, the external factors, they just become sort of much more. You just have a much better resilience to deal with them. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%, Doug. Yeah.
All right. So one other thing to tie into it before we sort of transition here is you ran a restaurant, right? So you had a staff and you had to hire people and fire people and deal with a team, managing a team, and just being a manager in general. And all the complexity of, I've worked in restaurants a little bit, not as, not that much, but a little bit, but you have to manage inventory, right? So you were talking about the prices and just ordering. So some people don't realize like you probably have to order stuff a couple times a week, right? Like based on or maybe more often, maybe every day, depending on the restaurant or what you're ordering. But you have to manage all this stuff. And I am making an assumption. I'll let you confirm or deny here, but eventually you had to scale up at Linkifi. You had to hire some people and like run this as a business. So are there any specific skills that transferred from the restaurant industry to your agency?
That's a good question. Yeah. Scaling up is definite. Well, like you said, I sort of did go into a business that was tried and tested, and it was like a known entity. So managing that part of it was something which I became quickly accustomed to. And obviously, it was pretty much already set up, and I would just test and tweak as I go. Our business now, Linkifi, in the online space, we're growing quickly and trying to scale at the same time. So I'm learning a whole new set of skills, video interviews and pre-screening applications, learning how to put like Easter eggs in job adverts so you can wean out the people that haven't read stuff. There's core elements to it, I guess. At the end of the day, you want to hire someone that's going to be good for the job. And my business partner has obviously a lot more experience in the digital marketing space anyway. So I'm lent on him a lot for as we're going. But yeah, the skills I would say in managing are somewhat similar, although like Slack is a whole new world in terms of the communication. I am quite a people person, and the team hasn't met yet as a whole. I've met my business partner a couple of times in person recently this weekend at a conference, and once where he lives in Portugal. So yeah, it's different. It's very different, but there are definitely fundamental skills which I think have crossed over.
Okay. And how many people do you guys have at Linkifi currently on staff, or part-time or full-time?
So I think we're up to about 11 now, and we're interviewing currently as well for 3 or 4 more positions, and then we'll see how. Yeah, I think we're going to be hiring quite a bit over the next few months. So we're just learning, we're doing our org charts and just trying to figure out exactly what we want to get out of everyone. But yeah.
Yeah, it's all different. Yeah, I hear you. There's some parallels, but yeah, it's totally different managing people in person versus you hire people probably across the world. You got to make sure they're not fucking around or like using AI, which we'll come back to because I'm sure it's impacting the work that you're doing. So before we transition into the nuts and bolts of a HARO campaign, you have Linkify over there. It is an agency. I'm going to let you hooked up the audience with a pretty good discount. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris, and just tell them, not super duper in depth, but like if they are interested and they want to check out the offerings that you have over at Linkify, what do we got and what's the discount?
Okay. So yeah, if I come on a podcast, I'll always just try and give as much information away as I can so that people can do this on their own, which they 100% can. And if you are like a bona fide expert in your subject, then you can do this on your own and do really well with it. But it is a headache. And that's why we have like a viable business proposition, because we can do it for you. So if after you hear me talk today, or you hear other stuff I've been on, and you decide you don't want to do it yourself, we can do it for you. You can have 20% off any of our packages with Doug's code, Doug20. And I have a course as well. If you have no idea what to do, the HARO Masterclass, you can get 20% off that as well with Doug20. So
very cool. And we'll link up in the show notes here so people can just follow along. I know people are like on the treadmill, or they're driving the car and their kids are in the back or something. So we'll link up and we'll put the discount code in there so people can check it out a little more in depth. And
cool.
Little tip for people, right? So if you look at the packages and you're like, it's too expensive for me, but you have a little more time, then the masterclass is perfect to go for, because then, I mean, you literally are getting the blueprint that your team uses, and you probably hire the staff and get them to go through the course, right? Like it serves double duty. So if it's too expensive to outsource completely, then you can learn the skills and do it yourself. So
exactly. Right. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that. And let's get into it. So what is HARO for people that don't even know what we're talking about?
Okay. So HARO is help a reporter out. At Linkifi, we use it as a catch-all term for answering PR requests. HARO is the biggest platform, so it's sort of taken the title that people use interchangeably to talk about PR requests. But specifically, HARO is you could just use HARO, but there are other platforms that connect experts with journalists. So the journalists will go onto the HARO platform. They're looking to, or they've been commissioned to write an article, oftentimes for massive publications. Not always though, and maybe we'll get to that, but a lot of the times it's for the biggest sites, biggest publications in the world, and they want to improve the quality of their story, the article that they're writing, by sourcing or quoting a handful of experts within their piece. Sometimes one expert, sometimes more experts. And so they will make a request via HARO in this case, asking for an expert in a particular field with specific questions. Often they'll put requirements, so specifically what it is they're looking for. And then everybody who's using HARO has the opportunity to respond to that journalist's request, answer the journalist's queries, and hope that when the journalist comes to write their article, they will include your commentary, your quote within their article, and then also hope, with fingers crossed, that they link back to your website. And if you get that link, then you've just won the game of HARO.
Perfect. Why are HARO backlinks better or worse or the same as like a guest posting link?
Okay, so HARO links are on the biggest sites. So you can't really get a link on the big editorial publications by paying for them or by doing a guest post outreach campaign. So these sites they're not going to respond to outreach emails, guest post emails, and those links will often allow you to acquire paid links on smaller publications. And then you enter the debate of whether or not Google knows those links are paid, which in most cases they probably do. Then you have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with building links to your business that at some point Google could turn on a switch that penalizes all sites that have links from these paid avenues? Whereas HARO is fundamentally white hat. So us answering a request to a journalist, we are trying to get a backlink by earning it through an editorially earned quote given by us, included in the publication written by the journalist, and then submitted and published onto that editorial website. So it's white hat, it's safe, and you're getting links that cannot be bought. And more often than not, if you know what you're doing and you know what sites to look for, what journalists to look for, you can get onto websites that have DR80 plus with hundreds and thousands and millions of organic monthly visitors. And one other thing to mention, I would suggest that depending on your appetite for the way that you build links, whether it's you don't want to do anything proactively at all, or you want to do a little bit, there is definitely links that will move the needle, rank individual pages, money pages, in which case, I would suggest if you are actively doing guest post building or just paid links in general, and you see results and you're prepared for that risk, then use HARO as part of, or HARO links as part of an overall link building strategy. 99% of the time, those links will be homepage links, and that's what's going to build the overall authority of your website, lifting up all of your other SEO, all of your SEO efforts, whether that's buying links or just your on-page, your outreach, everything else you're doing. Though that homepage HARO links will lift the authority and the EEAT of your whole website.
One thing you didn't mention explicitly, but I'll go ahead and say it. Some of the other agencies that do guest post links, right? People can go search for them. Basically, it ends up being content mills, right? So these content mill websites that will post, guest post links or just link insertions for like whatever, 10 to 20 or $30 or something like that. So that's generally, most of these agencies just have like a database of a bunch of websites that will accept a few bucks, and they're charging, right? The agency will charge whatever, $100 to $400, $500 or whatever. And they're just paying like $10 on the other side, right? And then if you go look at the websites, then you'll see a bunch of shitty posts with a bunch of shitty links to bad websites. And it's very clear. So I had a student email me the other day, like, hey, I got these links. They looked pretty good. The stats look pretty good. And the sites get organic traffic. I don't know why my rankings didn't move up. So I went and looked at I think it was like 4 to 5 backlinks. So I went to look at each one of those posts, and each one of the posts had at least 3 paid links in there. And I knew that they were paid links because, number one, my student, right, my friend,
Paid for them.
yeah, so he was on there. But the other thing, there was like an agency that paid, and it was like very clear branded links for that agency. So they didn't even separate the links from the different guest posts. They just got, for example, 3 orders in one day. They went to 4 websites and then put the same links from 3 websites into those. So it was very clear. I just looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, they put the same, like they're linking out to the same people. This is a clear footprint that I uncovered so quickly. So anyway, many of these agencies are just publishing on LinkedIn.
They're operating from the same from databases that are identical, and that's why I sort of gave it the caveat of it depends on your risk appetite, because let's be honest, links work. They're a fundamental part of the Google algorithm. They have been, and they will continue to be so. Which is why I know people that have ranked websites by all they've done is paid for links. They build a bunch of links to money pages and they can make loads of money. The problem is if you're buying links from the same databases that all the other agencies are using, at some point, Google has the ability to, they probably already have identified it and turn it off. Whereas HARO links, you're going to protect yourself from updates, because we know that links work. So if you're going to get links, then get links where the buck stops on the trail. Is Google ever going to penalize that site? Is Google ever going to penalize New York Times, Forbes, MSN, BBC? If it's never going to penalize those sites, which it won't, then the links that you have from those sites will never damage your site. So that's the safety net. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go through maybe a little example here. So what happens? Let's say someone wants to try this out for their site, and it's kind of a standard affiliate marketing site. Let's say it's a year old and they have, 50 or 100 posts, high quality. They're doing all the things right. And they actually have a little traction. Maybe they're getting a little traffic as well. So how does a person start to set things up and approach a campaign on HARO?
Okay, great question. So first of all, determine what niche you're in. So HARO and PR requests in general lend themselves to certain niches. So if your website is already in a good sort of HARO-friendly niche, and they're numerous, but also a little bit limited. So what I would first do is determine whether or not your site fits nicely into one of the easy HARO niches. So if you are a real estate website, real estate's a HARO-friendly niche. If you're an interior design website, interior design's a HARO-friendly niche. So if you fit into one of those niches, then you're good to go. If your site is much more niche specific, so if you operate, let's say, a site about reading glasses, okay? Something much more specific. This isn't an obvious HARO niche. So what you need to do is determine if you can legitimately make a connection between your specific smaller niche and a broader niche. So this would be health, I would suggest, which is a HARO-friendly niche. Then you need to position an expert. So the journalists, this may not have been the case 5 years ago, but now journalists, they only want to quote experts. So if you are running a reading glasses website, there isn't going to be any queries specifically on reading glasses. You can't answer queries on interior design. It doesn't make any sense. You run a reading glasses website. So you need to be answering health questions. And as a reading glasses website, then you would need to do a little bit of work to get yourself set up ready to answer HARO queries. And the way that you would do that is you would need to have a health expert on your site. Okay, be that a doctor, an MD, maybe fitness instructors, the thing that makes sense closest to reading glasses. Well, I would assume an optometrist, somebody like that makes sense within a broader niche from your niche specific website. Then you do what we have a service for, which is called HAROFi. So it's our HAROFi service. You can do this yourself. All you need to do is borrow and leverage the expertise of that specific expert. And the way that you would do that is you need to find somebody, so an optometrist, let's say, or a doctor, an MD, ask them to produce some content for your website. You can often find this with like retired doctors or part-time doctors that are also freelance writing, and get a handful of content and ask them if you have their permission to pop them on your website on the About page with clear visibility on the About page, author bios on the content they've produced, and ask if you could list them maybe as like a senior editor on the website or something like that. So it's clear that they're a representative of your brand. And then also ask them if you can have their permission to engage in a HARO campaign and respond to HARO queries on their behalf. Then you've just got to sell that small part to them, which is trickier and even more so in like YMYL niches. But it's doable. We do it as part of our service, and often they'll be pleased because you are trying to get something from them, but you are also giving something back to them. So if you say, look, can I pitch HARO on your behalf? Everything will be above board. I'm not going to make crazy stuff up. It's going to be sort of factually accurate and researched. I'll get a quote and a link back to my website, but you'll also, in exchange, have the fact that you have been featured in one of these massive websites. So it's sort of a win-win. Once you've managed to get to that stage, you're then in a position to pitch HARO as an MD working for chrissreadingglasses.com, but you're now pitching as a doctor and you're able to answer the health queries. So it might be a health query. How can somebody, they're doing a query on sun cream on the face, let's say. This one could be relevant to the glasses website. Mm-hmm. You could have the doctor answer that and say, sun cream's okay for the face, but you shouldn't get it in the eyes because blah, 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 blah. And then if you win the quote, they're going to say such and such doctor from chrissreadingglasses.com. And then that's it.
Perfect. Okay. So perfect answer. It was very dense. So we'll unpack some of the stuff. How do you structure the actual response? So I know when I first heard about HARO, it seemed like, I want to put as many details in there as possible. But after you've sent, dozens, hundreds of responses back, like what kind of structure seems to work the best?
I don't know if we're 100% perfect, and I don't think anybody can be, because on the other end of these emails is real people, real journalists. So everybody's looking for something different. But what we found to be successful is to just get your core elements in there. So first of all, say who you are, where you're from, quickly, not salesy, just straight to the point. You are such and such from this website. You should be have credentials and expertise. Get those out in a sentence as well. If you're a woodworking niche site, say you're a carpenter with 10 years experience, you're from such and such website, have a link to the website. Another key thing as well, if you have some historic good features, so if you have previously been quoted in like other big publications, say I've also been quoted in X and Y and Z, and then just qualify yourself to answer the query as well. So if they're specifically asking in the requirements or in the query itself, if they're specifically asking for a woodworker with 10 years experience, then make sure you say, I am a woodworker with 10 years experience. Because the journalists are getting hundreds of responses, and with AI, probably thousands now. I know there's AI Autobot generation tools now that are just answering HARO queries left, right, and center, which is bad in a way for the journalists, probably. But also it provides a massive opportunity because you can stand out much, much easier now just by formulating your responses. Answer the questions. If there's 4 questions, answer 4 questions. Keep it as short and succinct as possible, and don't deviate from what they've asked. I've seen that. We interview a New York Times journalist and another big journalist inside of our course, and I asked them what it looks like on the other side. And they told me that, people that start answering outside of what they've asked for, it's just an instant move on to the next. So make their lives easy.
Okay, great. And this is almost the same question, but maybe we could tease out some more information. What mistakes do people make, right? So partially it's just the inverse of what you just mentioned of like properly structuring, but like as a beginner, what mistakes do you see people making? Or maybe what were some that you made? You mentioned when you first started, you sent like 30 responses before you got your first link. So what are common mistakes? How can people avoid them?
Okay, yeah. So the three main ones, I don't want to lose my trail of thought here, and I'll try and do it quickly. The first one is the responses that you choose to actually go for. So HARO is not a curated list of publications, although I think there is some sort of mechanisms currently in its current guise. And don't forget, HARO's changing at the end of the year to a different, it's being rebranded to Connectively with a new platform and a new dashboard. We've got early access to that, so you can go and have a look as well. I think that is going to be a response to sort of limit the AI and the spam. But currently, the publications themselves, so the journalists that are making the requests, there can be publications in there that are not quote unquote HARO links. So there'll be crap websites on there. Okay. And they themselves are running backlink scans. So you'll see a publication or a journalist asking a query, you'll respond to the query, and then you'll get a reply back saying, oh, unfortunately, I'm all full up on quotes for this one. However, if you link to this website, I can give you a link from that website. So they're just running a three-way link exchange scam via the HARO platform. If you spent your day answering only 5 HARO queries, and those 5 ones that you've answered are all domains operating HARO scams, you've lost before you've even started. So knowing which domains to go for. If they go to linkify.io/freebie, we've got our curated list of domains which you should go for. So that's a good place to start for that. The other mistake that people make is not having the expertise or the requirements of what it is that the journalist has asked for. So if they're asking for a woodworker and you're a swimmer and you have a swimming website, but you say, I'm a swimmer, but I also like woodwork, forget it. You're not going to get it. You've wasted your time doing the pitch. And then finally, the other mistake which people make, and especially now in recent months, many, don't forget, HARO isn't an SEO. It's not designed for us SEOs and digital marketers to get backlinks. It's designed for journalists to get expert commentary. So the backlink often is not in any way at the forefront of the journalist's mind. So they can often forget to link. So the third mistake that people make is not tracking their unlinked mentions. So as an agency, I would say 20 to 40% of the links that we bill clients for at the end of the month that we win begin their lives as unlinked mentions. So it'll be on the website as a quote from X has said Y, and they just haven't linked to the website. And a simple follow-up email either to the journalist or to the editorial department on the website can result in a backlink in a 5-minute email. So those are the three main ones.
What do you put in that email, the follow-up email?
Give me a link. Normally just, hey, I've recently been featured in this article. Thank you so much. The article was amazing. However, I noticed that you didn't link to me. Is there any way that you would give me a link? Now, as an agency, we know the domains that will never give a link because it's part of their SEO editorial standards. So even if the journalist wanted to give you a link, and sometimes I've been sent drafts from journalists saying, this is a draft article, can you check if all the details are correct? The article will be going live next week, and you see a link in the Google Doc, you think, brilliant. Then the article goes live and it's on a website where they have a blanket policy of no linking. Many publications are now linking to LinkedIn's instead of URL, websites, which is super annoying. And then some publications are no follow linking. Many publications are no follow linking, which is fine because they're often the biggest publications, but some will turn that into a do follow if you just ask as well, which I don't know why they don't just do it in the first place, but it's a weird one. So keeping an eye on all of that can massively increase like your success rate at the end of each month if you're doing HARO.
And how often would you follow up, right? So sometimes you'll send that follow-up email, short, to the point, and then you don't hear anything back. Do you follow up every couple of weeks or something like that until you send 3, or do you just let it drop?
No, I mean, we have a database of the domains that we know a follow-up is like successful. So in that case, normally one email is the follow-up and then they'll do it. If they don't, we'll send another one to nudge them to say, can you please not forget me on this? If if we've done that one or two times and with no success, and go in all the avenues we can think of, editorial, lead editors, senior editors, sister websites is one that's worked for us. So if you get the US version of The Sun often doesn't link, but if you email the UK based editorial department and ask them, say, I've just been featured on your sister website in the US and you didn't link, can you give me a link? Can you please link? They will then do it on the US site. But then if we find out that publications have stopped linking or they've changed their policy, then we'll just update, and then just either we won't pitch those domains at all, or we won't follow up and we'll take the no follow, or often we'll just blacklist and we won't bother pitching those domains.
So let's zoom out just a little bit. Do you think if someone had the website that I described before, if they only focused on HARO links, do you think that's enough for them as like a foundation of backlinks, or do they need to do other stuff too?
Again, I think it depends on your appetite. It depends on the niche as well. I mean, if it's a casino site, then they're going to have to make paid link building a part of their like planned budgeting, because you can't succeed in casino without pay for links. But I'm almost certain all your audience aren't in casino or CBD. They're probably in normal niches. So I would say it depends on your appetite. I mean, I wouldn't run a guest post campaign now, because I did one and I got 50 links unpaid guest post, which were, for me, felt like real guest posts, because I outreached, they said yes, I actually wrote a guest post and got a link. I ran the same campaign about 2 years later, and every single person wanted money for the link. So for me, it's just become a paid link game now, guest posting. So I would definitely do HARO links. I would do HARO links from day one. Google is not going to think, oh, you've built links too early to this site if you're getting HARO links, good HARO links, because they're news links. It's a great foundation, and it does much, much more than just stimulate how Google is viewing your site algorithmically from a link perspective. It's also brilliant for your press badge. So for your customers to come to your website and see where you've been featured, your EEAT as well, and just an overall domain lift. And then outside of that, if you want to do other activities, then that's a personal preference. I don't have an opinion per se on that.
Great. Okay. Do you do anything specific to manage the relationships with reporters and journalists that you've had success with in the past? It sounds like you have a pretty good database on, the history of who you've interacted with. So do you do anything to nurture that relationship or stay in touch?
Not really, because we're pitching on behalf of our clients, aren't we? So to the journalist, we're the client. So we nurture the relationship in the sense that we know which journalists we're pitching, what their personalities are, what they like, what they don't like, what they do. But as me, Chris Panteli, or as an agency, we can't sort of talk to them about a link we've just won because we were Doug Cunningham when we won that link, or we were someone else. So we don't nurture the relationship in that way. We just know from experience at this journalist, they always like really short and snappy. If we do a really short and snappy response, if we do it as soon as the HARO email comes out, we've got a really good chance of getting quoted. This journalist, they want in depth, you've got to do something really interesting outside the box. They only ever quote absolute experts. If they're asking for a finance expert, they're not going to quote you if you say, hello, I run a finance blog. They're going to quote you if you say, hello, I currently run the South Asian arm of HSBC Banking Corporation. Those are the people they're quoting. So know your lane. So we've started to learn to know the lane of which journalists that we're pitching to when we're doing the responses. Yeah.
This will be almost impossible to answer, but I'll ask anyway. What is kind of the time commitment for running a campaign? And you can frame this however you want. Let's say, again, we'll just use that website that I keep referencing. There's a little bit of content, has some traction. Like, how much time does somebody need to put into this to get some results?
How much time to put into HARO? Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. So what I think is the best way to approach this, if you're not sure what to do, is if you're in a HARO friendly niche, let's say you've got a gardening blog, look at your competition. You should be able to know other sites that are similar to yours, or bigger than yours. Look at their homepage, look at their press badge. Often they'll have featured in Homes and Gardens, Better Home and Garden, blah, blah, blah. Look at the sort of 4 or 5 logos that they've got on their front page. Then start doing HARO. Just pick one of the emails. Don't do all 3, just pick one. If you're in the US, do the afternoon or the evening one. I think, actually, I'm not sure what time it is US. I know GMT, but yeah, do one of them. Yeah. And just look for those domains on that email and only answer those ones as well. Because if you are a gardening expert and you have a gardening blog, if you answer enough queries to Homes and Gardens, Better Homes and Gardens, the garden specific ones that your competitors have got, then I can guarantee, if you put an hour a day, just answering 2 or 3 a day, 5 days a week, you'll get a handful. And once you've got 5, you put those on the front of your website, you'll notice a lift in your DR. And if you're doing all of your other SEO efforts well, you're on page, if all that's done well as well, then those 5 links that you get, they'll lift everything up over the course of. I've seen we've done HARO links for brand new sites that have got them indexed. We've seen sites that have been dead on a downward trajectory. We've done a 5 or 10 link campaign, and within a couple of weeks, it's shot back. Traffic's just shot back up. It can be sort of what's that called? The
defibrillator.
The defibrillator on a site, yeah, because it's sending such good signals to Google, especially if you're getting them, over a more condensed period of time. 1 HARO link a year, it's still good, but if you're getting 4 or 5 over a couple of months, it's sending such good signals to Google that it's going to get everything going.
Perfect. All right, so I think this will lead to AI probably. So what changes or trends have you observed since you got started with HARO?
AI. Yeah. You should. I think you can use AI, but we're all going to be using it. Everybody else is using it. I think it's how you use it. So I don't think we haven't seen that it's good enough yet to write a response that's obviously not AI. The journalists spot it. They can spot it straight away. Don't forget, they're professional writers, journalists, storytellers, and they want to tell a story with authenticity. So unless authenticity is shining through in your quote, then they're not going to quote you. Where it can be really useful is research. But again, with research, AI, if everyone's researching with AI, everyone's doing the same research, everyone's given the same ideas, the same answers. Yeah. It's what it is amazing for is putting ideas together and then quickly putting it in a response. So one way that we've been testing and it's been really successful is if you just get a note on your iPhone, do a bit of research. If you're an expert, you probably don't need to do any research on the query. If you're a gardening expert and they're asking for the best way to stimulate your tomato plants during the growing season, and you know the answer, open up a note, press record, and speak with your own flurry of English, your own interesting anecdotes, turns of phrase, and answer the question. Don't worry about grammar, spacing, ums, ahs, just blah, 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 blah. Massive block of text, put that into the AI, ask it to tidy it up, but maintain the style and tone. And what you'll get is an output that is 100% passes all AI tests because it's your words. It's just taking you maybe 1/10 the time that it would if you had to hand type, check grammar, blah, 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 blah. So that's the way that I think it's going to go. And that's the way you can already use it.
Perfect. Yeah. I was going to say that's probably not exactly the way that I was thinking you could use it, but just to clean up. And sometimes, people want to give a really thorough answer, so it's a little too long, but you could ask one of the AI tools to make it more concise, remove any redundancy, and just have a tighter answer. And it should largely retain your voice, just like you mentioned from a voice memo. Pretty cool.
And it is fantastic at research as well. So if the journalists are writing about a trending topic, let's say quite an in-depth trending topic, of which you are have relative expertise in the broader field, but it's quite a chunky story, you could copy 2 or 3 websites of a news article. You could put it all into AI, and you could just say, give me a 2-paragraph summary of what's going on here. And then you can read the summary, and then you can have an opinion on the summary rather than having to read through, 3 or 4 websites. And any way you can save time, that means you can send more responses and increase your likelihood of winning pitches.
Jumping back to something you mentioned before, with the request from the journalist, do you always know the publication that they are working for?
You mean the anon? There's anons on there. So we sort of have an in-house policy to not answer the anons unless it's like a perfect query for a particular client, and if they've left the name of the person within the anon request. Because then what we can do is, if it's like a really, really good query for a perfectly aligned client, if we win the anon domain request, then obviously we know what site it's on. If it's on a garbage site, then we just know blacklist. If sometimes, rarely, but sometimes it's been on a site which is like, okay, this is a really nice site, that we then know the name of the journalist. So then we can link the name of the journalist to that anon request, and 99% of the time, the same journalist is doing the same request, and they're always putting the domain as anon. But as a whole, as a beginner, I definitely wouldn't bother. Just go for the 5 or 6 big ones that you've got a chance to get.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, very critical piece there. So hopefully people listen to the whole thing so they heard that. All right, as we're wrapping up here, are there any particular tools or apps or anything like that you guys use in-house to make this easier in any way?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do everything through Airtable. So we've got like a custom script that pulls the queries into Airtable. Then we can tag the domains, the quality that we know they are, get rid of the blacklisted ones, blah, 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 blah. But that's all seemingly changing over to the new platform, Connectively, which I think will give a lot of the functionality that we've like already built in-house, which is a bit annoying. But so we'll see. I'm not entirely sure. They've been saying that they're going to move over, and they're really slow to get back. So I'm not 100% sure what's happening with that. So we'll have to just keep an eye. But yeah, I mean, we use Airtable to sort the queries, but in terms of what other people can use, obviously one of the AI tools for like summaries and research is really good. Our free database is a tool which you should definitely use because it's free. And we'll make improvements to that as well. And another one, Google Alerts, obviously, to track your unlinked mentions. Remember those 20 to 40% of links. And there is another free alert tool called Talk Walker, TALK Walker. And you can set up a free account on there, and you can set your alerts for free. And it's actually quite a lot better than Google Alerts. And one tip on that is, if you're Chris Panteli from Linkifi is the best.com, then you want to put your name, Chris, set the alert as comma, Chris space Panteli, comma, Christopher space Panteli, comma, Linkifi is the best with spaces, Linkifi is the best, no spaces, every which way combination so that you definitely pick up the alert. And then if it's unlinked, send that email, get it turned into a link.
Got it. Okay. Good. So it was called Talk Walker. Is that what?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So it picks up some stuff that Google misses.
Yeah. I think Google's probably just a little bit delayed, but sometimes Google picks up stuff that one doesn't, and that one picks up stuff that Google doesn't. So if you have both, that's great. And most people have Google Alerts anyway. But yeah, that's definitely a good. It's free as well, so it's definitely good to have. And even if you're not doing HARO, it could be one of those things. I'm sure you get mentioned, Doug, right, on publications. If you see one on an amazing publication, just have a VA go through them every month, send an email, say, hello, can you please link to my website where you've mentioned me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do have an alert set up. They do pop up occasionally.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we're wrapping up here, is there anything else that is important that I didn't ask you about that you want to mention?
No, just don't be afraid to get rejected, and the likelihood is on HARO you won't actually get rejected. You just won't hear anything at all. So it's even worse than a rejection because you're just waiting. Don't send 3 and then think, oh, I haven't had a response. You won't get a response. And also, if you are going to start for the first time doing HARO, look at it as planting seeds. It's one of these things that if you do and you continually do, some editorial publications have such long lead times on, the date that the journalist is sourcing for experts to the time that it's published. The best link we ever got for a client, I think, was probably a do follow on tripadvisor.com for a travel client. And from the moment that we sent the PR request to the moment that the link went live was like over 6 months. Some you'll get like 2 days later. But yeah, just keep going at it. Make sure you show your authentic voice, answer the queries, and check those alerts.
Perfect. All right. This is great, Chris. Thanks for joining me today. Where should people find you?
Twitter, Linkifi, Linkifi _ on our website, linkifi.io. Or send me an email, chris@linkifi.io. I do respond, so that'd be awesome.
All right. Yeah, we'll link up to all that stuff. And don't forget, folks, you can get the 20% off for the packages over at Linkifi, or for the course if you want to, do it yourself, which is totally fine. All right, Chris, thanks a lot, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks for having me, Doug. It's been brilliant. Cheers.